Shalom, shalom. First and foremost, I start by giving all praises, honor, and glory to the Most High, whose true name is YAHAWAH, and I'll do so in the name of His beloved Son, HaMashiach YAHAWASHI. And real quick, this should be a short video, Most High willing. But the topic I'm going to touch on is why it's important to learn the Hebrew, right? And I just real quick, I want to make it clear that it's pivotal that we understand the translation of the biblical text is we have to understand this. Just starting off, we have to understand that the translation of a biblical text is a translator's interpretation of the text, right? So for instance, we have the KJV popped up, right? The translators beliefs, their understanding of doctrine is that makes an influence on how the text is translated, right? So you'll see certain understandings, certain colloquialisms that the translators might have understood during their times, and you'll see this in the text. For instance, you see Easter in certain places. You see certain things in the Old Testament as well. I won't go too deep in this video, but if you just understand this point that when you don't go into the languages, you're relying on the translator versus what the actual scribe that penned the Hebrew or Aramaic or whatever language. You're relying on the translator's understanding and their sense of what the language is saying, versus going into it for yourself, right? And you're always gonna deal with this particular I guess we could say issue, but the only way that you can get past this is by looking into the scriptures in the original language, right? And you start to develop a working knowledge of the language. You get a feel and a sense for the original text, right? And real quick, I want to share with y'all an excerpt from a book, and I'm gonna drop the book title. I'll try to drop the book title in the comments or maybe in the description. But real quick, here's an excerpt from a book called Learning to Read Biblical Hebrew by Jeff Benner, and this is from page 7. This is under the subtitle "Why Learn Hebrew," right? And it says, a translation of the biblical text is a translator's interpretation of the text. The translator's beliefs will often influence how the text will be translated, and anyone using his translation is seeing it through his eyes rather than the original authors. Only by studying the original language of the Bible can one see the text in its original state. And that's precisely, what I was saying, because, right now, as we see it, when we look at different biblical translations, although, translations like the King James Version, translations, like certain word for word translations, they're good, they do well, and we can look at interlinears. But we, the only way that we can, develop some type of idea that something is a good translation is by actually learning the language itself, That's how you're able to determine, yeah, this is a good language, or this is a good translation. This agrees with the original language. You're able to make that assessment by actually learning the language, right? And because there are some things that, with like when the language has to change, some concepts they tend to, get lost in translation, right? And I want to find for y'all the classic. This is from Ecclesiasticus. This is in the prologue. Many of us have read this. Change that. Where's it at? Here it is. It says, for the same things uttered in Hebrew and translated into another tongue have not the same force in them. And not only these things, but the law itself and the prophets and the rest of the books have no small difference when they are spoken in their own language, right? So in other words, when the writer says, things uttered in Hebrew, and translated into another tongue, don't have the same force, he's basically saying, that these things get lost in translation, right? And anybody that, for any of you that don't understand, what the phrase "lost in translation" means. It's simply just an idiom that denotes, the failing of a phrase or certain words, to have the same meaning or effectiveness when translated into another language, right? That's all it means. So it's important, that we go into the language, chiefly the Hebrew, because the people that, we read about, that we hear about through the scriptures, these people, they were Israelites, who spoke Hebrew, for the majority, right? And, understanding the sense of, words and phrases that were used, this is important, for, getting, or trying to obtain full understanding, because if you don't fully grasp, the sense of what, certain authors are saying, and you're only viewing it from a 21st century Western lens, you're gonna stumble and you're gonna have a hard time, trying to pick up, certain mysteries within the scriptures. You're not gonna notice certain things or idioms or just certain ways that Hebrew poetry, or certain aspects of Hebrew poetry, right? And and this, again, it's paramount that, the so-called black and brown man, over here in the Americas, we get at least a knowledge or working knowledge of our language, because so many of us, we're ignorant to our language, so we rely on English translations, and because of that, we start to stumble. You know what I'm saying? Like we start to stumble at, many scriptures, and this causes the creation of many false doctrines. Even amongst some brothers that are in this truth. But this is really the majority of a lot of our people just that are so-called Christians. Right? That's especially the case with them. But real quick, just touching on being ignorant. Let me bring out this preset. Let me see. Let me see. So this is the book of Ecclesiasticus, chapter 5, verse 15. It says, "Be not ignorant of anything in a great matter or small." So, you can't be ignorant of these things, especially the language that the scriptures were written in. You can't, I'll say especially the Hebrew, because that's where the law and the prophets come from. You can't, just be totally ignorant, of the Hebrew language. You have, I would say to obtain, to how they say reach higher heights. I would say you would at least need to obtain a working knowledge in the Hebrew language. And also just another point, that also goes into, studying to show yourself approved. Real quick, let me bring that out. Second, let's go to the book of Second Timothy. Let's jump down. So there's a book of 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse 15. It says, "Study to show thyself approved unto God, a workman that needeth not to be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth." And when you go into the word study, it goes back to meaning devoting oneself, or giving full diligence. All right, so it's very important that we're giving full diligence and devoting ourselves to trying to obtain full understanding of these scriptures. And what comes with that is understanding the language and the script in which the scriptures were originally written in. You know what I'm saying? So most high willing, I've drilled the point home on why it's pivotal to start to learn the Hebrew language. And most high willing, I'll drop more videos on the topic of the Hebrew and how to learn the language and things of that sort. I definitely want to start bringing out more knowledge and also edification on this particular topic. I've been studying the Hebrew for some years myself. I could read Hebrew. I could read the negroid system, and of course without. You know what I'm saying? So I think it's good to have just a working knowledge of our language. And it does come in handy, when having certain dialogues, when teaching certain points, when it's a very, very important I'll say skill to have, right? But with that, I'm gonna give all praises, honor, and glory to YAHAWAH, YAHAWASHI, and until next time, I'll say Shalom.